Welcome to our section today with Marcia Brissett-Bailey, all about being Black, brilliant, and dyslexic, career success for an intersectional strength. Thank you so much all for joining. It's going to be a really good session around your career, but mostly all about the strengths of your career and that intersectional strength piece. I know Marcia really well, I'm proud to say, and Marcia's exceptional at what she does. One of the questions I've got is, you being an author, thought leader, speaker, educator, career advisor, before all that recognition, is there one moment in your career where you felt unseen or underestimated and how to tune into your strength?
Hello, everybody. I would say it really started at primary school, but I won't go into it too much. It's a story in itself. But I felt very unseen and not believed or misunderstood. That carried with me for quite a long time, right into my adulthood, actually. But the key thing about that is that when my teacher told my parents I wasn't going to academically achieve, it was a changer for me, because for me, sometimes I need something to trigger me. I just decided that wasn't going to be me, that I wasn't going to be academically able to achieve whatever that was meant to mean to me and my parents, because at that point I had selectively muted because of traumatized at school. I think that was the first time I felt, actually, I want to be seen. I want to have my voice heard because you don't understand me. I was 10 then. I'm dyslexic. I didn't know I had any differences in my learning in the sense of knowing it had a name or what have you. But all I did know, I wanted to show up. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. That is very long ago in my life experience. It is part of what's helped me to become me, if that makes sense, not feeling that I belonged. Yeah, that was the first time. And it's a very long time, but it does start in those early years, I believe. It can really shape you or break you.
Totally agree. It's such a powerful, wise thing to know at the age of 10 as well. And even now, how do you personally define career success? Obviously, it's evolved over the years, but right now in 2025, on the 5th of June, how do you define personal career success?
Telling you about my early childhood experience, just a snippet, say a snippet, because it's a book in itself, I feel. We've all got our stories and books to that we can tell. But I really struggled. Even now, I still struggle when we talk about success. I struggle with that wording. And I just wonder how we can reframe it. Because when we talk about success, it means that you've got to be achieving and you've got to be at the top of your game. But I look at success is maybe waking up, getting up in the morning. How do we reframe what success looks like? What does that look like? And how do we restructure it in a way? Because, yeah, it still is quite triggering for me. It still feels, we have to climb a ladder, but whose ladder? And to what version does that look like? Yeah, success for me is so many things, but it's not necessarily climbing a ladder. It can be sideways. It can be just that I've had that gratitude of getting up in the morning. That's my success, because some of us really struggle with getting up in the morning for whatever reasons. It's not about a judgment, but it's just, for me, I think we do need to reframe success and how we measure success and whose standards, whose lens. I may not answer the question in a formal way. This is my success and these are my achievements, but I'm learning to find value in achievements, which is just similar to success, or if it's not, it's the same. Who knows? But I'm learning that because I have to have an understanding of being compassionate and kind to myself and to say I have achieved things, because I just feel from a very early age, I didn't feel good enough. I think that's why I struggle with success, because I've had to navigate. For some of us on the session today, it may resonate that we've had to find ways, especially someone being neurodivergent, to navigate and, just in a way that you feel like you have to hack a system. That's why I think when I'm thinking about and talking to you and I'm reflecting, it still hasn't gone away, that trigger about success and that you're an A grade student and I'm what am I? Do you have to be successful to have an A grade? Because it doesn't mean that I'm not intelligent, but I may not be super focused in the book knowledge in the way that you are. It doesn't mean I can't do it, but it's how are you assessing me to get the same result? How are you framing that? Why can't I do my assessment by speaking my exams? It's like, how do we reframe what success looks and how we can achieve it? If you're giving me a different post to lean against, which I'm just not going to meet. I think that's why I struggle with the word success, because how do you get there? What ladder am I climbing to be able to achieve what's meant to be successful? But as I said, and I don't want to go off track, when I do talks and I give talks, I do show a list of things I've achieved or I've got awards, because I struggle with that. Even now, I'm grateful people have nominated me and put me forward. I really am, but I really struggle with it too, because it's still trauma there. It makes me actually quite tearful, because I don't want to struggle with it, but I just think that, yeah, we have to look at different ways of how we look at success. And I think that's okay too, that we can go a different way to be successful in whatever frame we call it. I'm not a theorist to what the terminology is to this, but I just know that we have to look at it differently. We learn differently. We have to look at success differently. I'm successful and in this sense of getting up in the morning and achieving something. I hope that makes sense to everybody. I'm sure
Sorry, I mean, it's such an interesting topic, right? The word success. And I think you're completely correct. We have to redefine the word and own it and create our own ladders or whatever that looks like, if it even is a ladder. I think many of us have been measuring our measurement against somebody else's framework. It's really powerful to just think, okay.
Can I just say one thing about it? I think if I'm going to use the word success in any shape or form, it will be learning to know myself and love myself. Again, we haven't got the time for it, but I think that's what I would say most, because I've continued to learn and grow about myself and learn to be able to advocate for myself. And I think that's been the success for me.
Brings me on to the next question. How do you unapologetically advocate for yourself? How do you do that? What does that look like in your career? We talk a lot about taking up space and how often we should be able to be visible and show up. But what does unapologetically advocating for yourself really look like? Give a few examples.
Even though people know me, I say sorry a lot, but I think there's some cultural references to that, not just also being at school feeling sorry that I've not done it right. But I'm learning to just show up and be myself. And know that's me. I'm not just going to say, oh, this is the quirky Marcia. This is who I am. So I'm not apologizing for that. I can always learn and I can do things better, but I'm not apologizing for showing up and being myself anymore. If I disclose that I'm dyslexic, what are you going to do about it? I'm not giving that to you as to say that it's going to be a problem. I'm just sharing that is part of my difference in the way I may see things, and it's okay. I've learned to do that self-talking and advocating. I guess I have had to invest in myself in terms of the work. I've had to do a lot of investment in terms of building to where I am with that as well. So that has included having therapy. When I was a child, I had psychotherapy solely because of the trauma at school. I've done a lot of work, the mirror work. I don't really like that, but I've done things to really think about myself and where I am at in understanding me. I feel that's where some of the work has come from, doing coaching and counselling and different things. I've had coaching in my older sort of adulthood where I've had counselling when I was younger, and both have really given me the tools to help me to show up, but also I've had to do that development in myself as well. I don't know if I'm answering the kind of question to it, but I'm no longer apologizing for being me, because I used to do that a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. I still say sorry, but I'm clearer about it sometimes.
Fantastic.
But,
So
I don't think it's a good example.
not apologizing for existing. It's being standing your ground, saying, actually, this is the stuff I need. This is what's going to be helpful for me. Just to go back to your point around the word success, some of our viewers, like Helen has said, it's such a conscious effort each day, reframing, and also the shame, etc. around it. And Emma has shared, I think, how to define success changes through life. There are times success has been getting out of bed. Other times it is getting the job I wanted. I think both of those are so relatable, right?
100%. That's why the way I understand it and how I understood it as a child success, now I've grown into adult. For me, it changes, but the frames that we see, it's like there's some kind of ladder. I'm agreeing too with what the feedback is. Exactly. We grow and success is going to look differently. But it's just a shame for our younger people that success is always looked at. You've got to be this A student. You've got to be this, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, question. Your intersectionality, because identities are just so huge, right? But which part of yours was most misunderstood early in your career? And how did that misunderstanding impact your journey? Last but not least, how do you help empower others to embrace their own intersectionality?
That's two in one, isn't it? Okay, so I'm a bit of a storyteller, but I'm going to have to go back to something. When I was diagnosed as dyslexic, when I didn't know the word intersectionality, but what I did know, there was something that I had to change about the way I was viewing myself. When I was diagnosed, I was like, amazing, I'm no longer stupid. A lot of people, you'll hear them talk about being dyslexic and not feeling stupid. This is why it's all linked to success and all these kind of things. I thought, great, I'm no longer stupid. But then I thought, okay, I'm now dyslexic. So there's going to be some barriers there. Then, okay, I'm Black. I've already been told I've had to work twice as hard from my upbringing, being a young Black girl. I'm a woman. There's this whole thing about a glass ceiling. From a very early age, I already understood there was differences to how I had to show up. Those are intersections. Intersectionality in itself, in its pure self, was coined and developed by Kimberly Crenshaw. It was about race and pay in terms of the work she was doing to work with women who were marginalised from Black communities. That basis of it is really important just to say. But for me, being a Black woman and dyslexic, I knew all those intersections were impacting me already before it formed into one or two or three labels. Does that make sense? For me, I thought, okay, I cannot choose one of these because they're all of me. That was the realization that I'm going to have to show up. This is all of me. All these intersections are part of me, my working class environment, growing up in Hackney, which at the time, Hackney was what they call that social deprivation kind of thing, really hard to reach young people. I know that environment failed me. I had to start to show up as me, and I couldn't choose any one of those. They were all part of me. So I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have my A game on here to be able to be me. It's been tough because the intersections of understanding the systematic barriers and the systems what were constructed before I was born, I'm now have to weave in between those to be my authentic self. Racism, classism, all those things. I was having all those labels thrown at me as a young Black girl, trying to just exist and be me. How was I going to do that? Those are where the intersections for me have shown up. My environment, my class, cultural elements will show up in that. But yeah, those are the key things for me. Being a young Black woman, being dyslexic, it's been a journey. And people can sometimes relate to when you talk about being a woman, because the intersections for me was that I grew up in quite a matriarchal household across my aunties and everything like that. So when I went out into the world, I realized actually there's this glass ceiling and women have to play a role like this. It was very hard for me because I've got a voice, so why can't I use it? Because what have I got to be? I can't be in leadership. That was very much so when I was growing up. There was very much a clear hierarchy of where women's roles were, but I didn't fall into that very well. I'm not saying I'm radical, and I don't think we should look at radical as being negative necessarily, but that's just my disclaimer. I'm saying that it can be a way of discovery and finding you. Again, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I'm hoping to the understanding of intersection and the lens that I play. We'll all have our own intersections. But for me, as a Black woman, the intersections around racism and race have caused an impact. My first degree was in information science. And I know going to those corporate organizations may have been caught, being mostly with white men, going in there, knowing I'm dyslexic, and then I've got an IT background. It could be very confusing, and I feel like I didn't get a lot of those jobs because I think people were quite confused. Does that make sense? I'm just throwing that in the air there, but I just know that I've had a lot of barriers to show up because of those intersections and people's thought process to how they saw me. That's why I can't apologize for that. I can't apologize for being me, and I won't apologize for being me, and I'll just show up and be real. But it can take someone a long time to feel comfortable. We talk about code switching, we talk about all these things. I do also hear that in that breath. That's where I guess my work is to provoke in the things that I share, and to get us thinking about what is the fears that we have, why are we feeling uncomfortable. I mean that to the wider sense, but in working with people and supporting people, helping them to just find their voice and empower them. What are your fears? What is it you're feeling? How can you get the right support? What is it you need? Just to make people seen and also listen to and believed. That's a good starting point, and then work through it that way. That's how I sort of work, to empower others, because I've been there. I know what it's like when you're not believed. It's not a nice feeling. That's where I guess the imposter syndromes come up. I always say, you are not the imposter, it's the system. You've been told you're not good enough. Of course, you're going to start to have some feelings or elements of trauma where you're feeling that you're not good enough, but you're not the imposter. I always work and unpick what an imposter is.
What I'm hearing is about validating some of these experiences and not invalidating them, to really help them actually see that what they've experienced is valid for them rather than dismissing them. I think it's such an important, powerful piece, because oftentimes in spaces we're told, oh, maybe you're overreacting, maybe you're being too sensitive. I think it's really powerful and really speaks to your character as well around that validation piece. And just to go back to the comments as well, Helen talks about teachers can defo play a role here. As my geography teacher told me I'd never get anywhere because I got an E grade, I emailed them when I got to uni. But that was a confidence note for sure. Again, if I had the email addresses of my teachers, whew, but we can relate to what Helen's saying as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. As I said, my teacher told me I'd never academically achieve. I'm still trying to work out what that actually means. But she had written me off, and then it was just like, no, that's not me. I had to just find that light and have hope. It's nice when we can have those validations to say, look at how I am now, but not all of us get there. That's some of the work that I really want to do. It's not easy work, because there are a lot of people feeling traumatized by their experiences. And especially as adults, we're still carrying that. I call it shopping bags, where we're carrying, and how do we let go of those? Because they've been so heavy, we've carried them. We're almost protecting them now, even though they're not good for us. And it's really hard.
This could definitely work. I guess the question that kind of comes to mind is around performative inclusion. Specific question, I suppose, is when we're talking about career progression, what metrics actually matter to in the field that you're working in when you're thinking of the individuals that you work with and support, whether they're dyslexic, autistic, etc. Are there any things that kind of come to mind?
Okay, in my work currently, I work with young people in mainstream and in special schools, behavioural schools, if you want to have it. But one of the things I always work with is leaning to your strengths once you know what they are, but also find things that you're passionate about and you enjoy. I feel when you start to talk about things that you enjoy and your strengths, I think for some, especially for young people and even adults, leaning into your strength, sometimes we haven't done that strength-based work. So we don't even know really what our strengths are, because we're just looking at, oh, you've got to write it like this. You're so focused on the kind of linear rote learning. You've got some other strengths that you think, well, this is a bit different, but I'm really good at this. I know I can see pictures before I see words. That's not funny. That's actually a strength for somebody. But we're not talking about these creative ways of thinking a lot of the time. I start to unpick what are the things they're good at, even go back to when they were at school, like early days of things they loved, and try to talk about the things that brings them joy and brings them happiness before we start breaking down, oh, it's got to be A-levels, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. It doesn't have to be, remember this ladder of climbing this way, it could be sideways. It could be in a different way. I think for me, I try to look at what brings you joy and what's your passions, and then work around that to look at how we can create those kind of careers that you want and the things you want for yourself. I also talk about different streams of income, entrepreneurial thinking. If you're doing the A-levels or you're doing this particular thing, what else can you do and how can you keep the things that you're passionate about alive? If it's a hobby or it's something where you can be part of a club or part of what we have here today, doing things that can help you to just show up and be you, but bring you joy. I always start with what's the things you look at, and then for some of us, we just go into this, well, we've got to do this and it has to be like this. It doesn't have to be like that. We're quite fortunate. And I'm talking to the UK, that the vocational way we can do things, you can work in different ways to still get to the same end product, with consistency, with determination sometimes, with support, learning to ask for help. We can really get there on some of the things we want to do, but it can be very frightening and fearful when we're doing things that we want to do. There's so much to it, and it depends, as we said, about the experiences you've had, feeling good enough, and the support that you can get to bring some of that out, tap out some of those things that's been really difficult for you in the past, to be able to really draw upon the things that you find joy in, and seeing if you can use that to be what you want to be in terms of whether it was a designer. I love doing that work because you see some amazing results of people really finding their way on their career journey. It don't have to be a lawyer. It doesn't have to be, do you know what I mean? I do understand that. I also support parents wanting the best for their children, especially from some marginalized communities, to have professional careers. But I've even had a student who their parent wanted them to do law, but they end up doing psychology. But once they did it, they told their parents. I'm not advocating for that, but what I'm saying is that they got a first, and it's because they wanted to do something that brought them joy. It's how do we work within our systems to work on that, to realize it's not about just 9 to 5, and how do we get value in the things that we're doing? I hope I'm not going off, but yeah, it's so many different layers to it, I think.
I guess the message here is too many people are stuck in their careers where they probably don't even enjoy what they do. How can we figure out what joy looks like, and how do you integrate that into your everyday? One of the things you talked about is self-expression and making sure that it's aligned to your values and what you care about, what really resonates with you. What would be on your joy list?
My joy list is still writing. I love writing. I've got so many journals that I love to do. I love what I call doodling. Something like that for me, I make time for it. I love to be in nature. These little things, even if I've got my 9 to 5, which I love, or I love doing work where I'm working in a conventional way, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not barring that, but it's finding things that brings you joy. I remember liking colouring. How do you bring that into your daily routine or your weekly routine or your monthly routine? What could you do to keep those things alive? I always say that I don't want to make a judgment, but we forget to play as adults. And I think play is so important. I think we forget those things about being curious and just being in a moment sometimes. And I love to be in a moment. I'm terrible. Let's just do that. Yay. But I think that's the neurodiversity of me. Let's just do it. I think that I'm loving the fact that I can do that a little bit. And I do like to play. I like playing around. I'm a big kid. But I think we forget that we get into the seriousness of things. And I think for me that, yeah, playing and just finding the creative stuff in me to just keep me alive really.
Makes complete sense. In order for us to play in our roles, oftentimes we have to have some reasonable adjustments to help us to even access the job, right?
Yeah.
If we actually reframe the reasonable adjustments as a sort of essential liberation, how would we talk about that? What would we be saying instead of this is what I need?
I always talk about boarding in a workplace. It'd be just great if your employers or the work culture of an organization reframes. These are the resources we have. This is for everybody. We talk about universal design and all these kind of things, but I just think as organizations, as we grow and bring value to our staff, we want to say, these are the resources we have. We haven't got something that would benefit you. Just talk about that. We always talk about the adjustment. It feels so rigid and feels like it's an adjustment because you can't do something. I just feel like it'd be great to reframe it in a different way. But I think it starts with our organization and our leaders to have more insight to what inclusion looks like, or reframing about including everybody to the best of their ability. It's a continuous learning journey. You can't just say, we've got the finished article, this is what it looks like, because it's always evolving and we're all unique and individuals in that process. But I think if we start with the organizations, this is what we have. It just makes me feel that the organizations that we're working in have an understanding about how we can all be included in that, because our brains all think differently and we all show up differently. Whether we're talking about neurotypical, we've all got something to offer in that workplace. I've got that job. I fit that JD. I want to do that job, but I might just do it in a different way. I might draw a picture. Is that okay? We have to adapt. I feel I've had to adapt in a neurotypical kind of linear way of working. But why can't we all bring something? Because I think neurodiversity is rich for business. So why can't we all bring something to that table? For me, reframing is having different ways to show up and present the things to be able to be good for that business, and it being okay as a way of bringing it and not being strange or being performance managed because the way you've presented that wasn't the way we wanted it. And I feel like there's something happening here. Why can't we have a reverse of understanding the different ways that we can present things to still get the same results? I think I may have gone off in a different way about what we're reframing, but I just feel that I'm getting exhausted talking about adjustments and access to work and all these kind of things. Yes, they're really important for various reasons, and I'm a big advocate, but there is some responsibility of our organizations as well about how they approach inclusivity in their workplaces.
I guess based on that and making it as successful and easy as possible, you're in a workplace, you're trying to strive to a career. Your reasonable adjustment piece is one of those things where it depends on a manager. What are the 3 questions that we could be asking ourselves, help us to bring out our strengths within ourselves so that we can feel much more empowered?
It's got so many layers to it, Ruth, because it depends if you've disclosed, for one thing. Remember, I've talked about the trauma piece. If you feel not good enough, but you feel confident to do it. The question, I guess, is in my mind is whether you've disclosed that. And if you haven't, how do you now approach it? If we're talking about if you have, I would just be talking about some of the things that's going to be useful, supporting me to do my job to my best ability. I don't know if I'm covering what you're asking me, but really for me, I'm struggling because I feel like it really depends on that individual and how they're showing up in the workplace. There's whole things around code switching. For example, if this helps, when I started my career very early on when I was a tutor, if I had to do reports or anything like that, I stayed late. I never wanted to make any reasonable adjustment. I just wanted to be like everyone else. It's not that I wasn't like everybody else, but just in terms of how I might have to do that piece of work. Gosh, if there was assistive technology in those days, I'm not even talking about AI, but if there was ways that I could do that to make it easier, I had the knowledge and I know what I'm doing with data, but I just chose to stay late at work continuously all the time. Not that I wasn't advocating for myself, but I just felt like I didn't want to be a bother. I don't know if that makes sense. It just took me a while it wasn't sustainable for me long term. So I just decided that I'm going to have to get some adjustments here. And I just decided to say, I'm going to support. And there is something called Access to Work, which can assess me to just look at some of the things I might need to do my job in a different way to be able to support the things I need to do in my day to day. I don't know if I can think of 3 questions. I don't know what it is, but I still think about the fact that this is an individual thing because I only can talk about myself because I know having worked with so many people is so different for so many people because they're so different in the way that the journey is to where they are and about their own self-discovery and about their own strengths and knowing who they are. I know there's so many people feeling that they're being performance managed. All I can say is about how you can be yourself and be able to feel that you can find somebody that you can trust to talk about it to, whether it's an employer resource group or somebody outside of the organization, or if you've got a coach to coach yourself. I'm only saying this because I know I find it hard to talk about what I think will work for me or what I've done, but I know it can be really difficult. I would definitely be in the first point of view, speaking to somebody who you feel comfortable to say, these are the things I'm having difficulties with or not. For me, I've always disclosed most of my career, I've always disclosed. I think what the tricky thing is when people asking you things to do and you may just need to do it in a different way, but I still get the same result. It's just people having understanding to say I might need a bit more time, and it's building your confidence to feel that you can do that. I'm finding it a bit tricky just because I just feel like it's something where I've had to grow into feeling confident to say I'm dyslexic. It's not an excuse, but I just might need a bit of support in this way. Or could you just run through that or go through it? I had a really amazing manager where she would just sit through all of the key things that I needed to do just so I process it in a different way. She might, before just sending it to me, she'll just go through the point. And that was helpful. Now I was off. I could do my job. So it's knowing what your strengths are, knowing what things you are tricky and maybe asking if you can get support in that or somebody just going through it with you. I don't know if that helps, Ruth, or anybody. Anybody can say anything to tell me if I'm making sense.
I'm going to come back to the question. We've got a few people that have comments just in terms of that reasonable adjustment piece, right?
Yeah.
Helen said, I recently asked for a reasonable adjustment for an interview question in advance and a brief description of the task they said I'll be doing after the interview. But they said it's not something they do, but that I could come 30 minutes before to see the question.
I get more about those are definitely adjustments. Yeah.
Jodie said, if I went somewhere that said no to a reasonable adjustment at interview stage, I would not go to that interview. It would be an awful place to work. It's definitely an indicator, right? If they're saying we don't do that. Ruth said, I had the same with questions given minutes before interview. This was health and safety exact. Molly, I agree. That's shocking.
Yeah, definitely for interviews. Sorry, let you finish.
I think it's key to validate this experience and why it's such an important piece. For the employers out there, let's reiterate why we need those interview questions in advance.
Lots of people that I know, you get anxious or you might feel that you need to prepare because it helps you to just align yourself so you know what is going to come. It's all going back to this feeling that you're cheating or you're hacking the system or something. No, it's to help you just to be prepared and to ease yourself. I know people won't go for interviews because they've just got so anxious. But if they have those questions, they can know what they're going into so they can just be prepared beforehand. That's a good reasonable adjustment, asking for the questions beforehand is really important. Yeah, a really good one. If me say no, then that's a really good indicator. I'd be asking myself, do I want to work here?
Yeah, I think it's discriminative, right? Because we're thinking about it from a executive function challenge. My memory isn't as strong to understand and remember certain things I've done to answer your question, right?
Yeah.
Around, give me an example. I can't give you an example. I can't record it because I'm so anxious and I can't even get the information out. It's just more inclusive and accessible for you to be able to be like, I'm going to give it to you in advance so that you can show up as your best self. I think it should be just a given. It shouldn't be like, we don't do that. Going back to my question.
I probably had a block in my mind there. Thank you for filling in, everybody.
Helen says she's questioning it. I reframe my reply to they've given me the alternative of by book pre-prof. By now, they're quite a well-known organization too. Organizations, if you are here and you give questions in advance, show up for yourself. Say, hey, we do questions in advance. That's standard practice for us. Celebrate that, because even though it should be book standard, it isn't. If I'm in a room, whether I'm disclosed or not disclosed, and I'm doubting myself and I'm thinking, I need to remember and recall my strengths. Are there any questions I ask myself internally that will help pull out some strengths?
Sorry, you have to say that again.
For example, if sometimes there isn't a person that's available to have a conversation with, and sometimes all you've got is yourself and your own thoughts and doubts that come up, right? There's times when you need to tap into the inner strength of remembering who you are. I'm just wondering, are there any questions you ask yourself? There might be a challenging task, situation coming up that generally helps you to show up in your fullness.
I'm going to say something which may be a little bit strange, but I always say that my ancestors, I think about my mom, my dad, who are no longer here. I think about not showing up for them. They've had to come from a very hard place. I'm going to show up for myself because I know that it's because of them I'm here. I do things like that because I feel that helps me to align, to remember who I am and where I'm coming from. That gives me perspective. I do a lot of self-talk to say, Marcia, you're worthy of being here. You deserve to be here. I have those conversations because I can go the other way, because I'm also an introvert. I do go shy and go quiet as well. So I have to have conversations with myself. For me, it may sound unusual for some, but it's almost like I show up for the people who love me. And it's not that I can't do it for myself, but I just remember where they've come from, whether it's my grandmother. That makes me show up and remember that their love is shining through me. I also just remember where I've come in terms of my experience and think, I'm going to do this for me. Why not take a chance on me? Just never give up. All you can do is try it. And if it doesn't work, then you just redirect to something else.
One of the things that I've always found quite powerful and I tell people to do as well, if you have a brag book, a book where you just go to and you've got all of your creative achievements, it doesn't necessarily have to be about your career. It can just be about who you are, your values, what you bring to the world. If you remind yourself about that and almost let that wash over you on a daily basis, it helps you almost to have a better sense of self. I think that's what we're talking about here. How do I have a better sense of self? So when something turbulent comes along, I'm able to be grounded in who I am, not what the world says I am. I think that's a huge piece of the strengths part.
Yeah, I do like daily affirmations. I have little cards and I'll pick one up and that will be my affirmation for today. You are amazing or you're awesome. Things like that can be helpful just to remind yourself when you're in the fog of it all and trying to just show up. Sometimes that can be hard. I have affirmation things like that to just remind me to reflect on who I am and to bring that positivity to myself.
Love it. Positivity to yourself, because there's been, again, lots of research around the way that we speak to ourselves and more likely to have doubts come up as well. I guess a question that would be really good to lead us into, if you could bottle one part of your brilliance and hand it to every person out there that you met, what would it be? What would be your bottle of brilliance?
It's hard. Again, I think it's the kind of the practitioner in me, but I would just say, just try, go for it. Don't believe in yourself. I've got this thing, it's like, I've been told not to say it, but I like taking risks. I'm not saying risks like, oh my gosh, I'm going to take a risk and just do something. But if something's new, sometimes just try. You never know. It doesn't mean that you've failed if it didn't work. Just try things, try something new. It's hard sometimes to come out of your comfort zone. See just how it goes. You're going to be okay. You'll come out the other side of it. If it's something new.
Your bottle of brilliance is all about giving people permission to just go for it. Just try it, see what happens.
It can be, but if it's something you want to do, especially, yeah, I would say.
Okay, fantastic. If you all have your own bottle of Brilliance and it was packaged and it looked like a Dior bottle or whatever else, what would be that gift? What would that be giving other people? Put it down in the comments. I'll just think about it. It's a good thing to remember because it's what you exude and share with everyone that you come across as well. That bottle of Brilliance, just try it. We support so many careers, young people, even people that are not so young, that are just transitioning. But what is that one pivotal moment where you was like, I made it in my own way? Did that moment ever come to you? Has that moment come to you? Does it come to you on a daily basis?
It can be daily. Sometimes I think, wow, I can't believe, look where I was to where I've come from, where I was told I would never achieve. I think the biggest one, even though I'm still working through it, is being able to write a book. Because remember, I was told I would never achieve. To write that book, Black, Brilliant and Dyslexic, I think, and you know that journey a little bit, Ruth, it brings a tear to my eye, to be honest, because it does tell me that anything's possible. I do believe in something, and I can't say the word today, so you can see the dyslexia manifestation, like you've been believing in that thing and it will come true. I do believe in some of that, because if I didn't have that belief in myself, and even if it was just a little bit, I wouldn't have achieved to write that book. There's something about having self-compassion and learning to love yourself. I think that's been the big thing for me, learning to love myself, because that wasn't always an easy journey. I never looked at what it meant to love me. And if I don't love myself, how can I love others? I think that achievements come through all of those self-discoveries to slowly feel, wow, Marcia, that's something you've achieved, and try to be proud about it. I do lots of posting about it, but I still feel sometimes what's happened in my journey is that I've achieved something and I just tick it off and move on to the next thing. I'm not taking a moment to pause, because it's been survival mode. It's been so tough sometimes. You're just like, okay, I've done that. I've moved on. I've got the job. Great. We're working on it and not looking to think, let's just breathe. Let's just pause and say, I actually did this. And that's a really good achievement, Marcia. Well done. Have some joy in that. That's what I'm slowly starting to do. So you can see I'm still processing it, because I'm still working through it, because it has been a journey. But I think one of my achievements is writing a book. And I hope that inspires other dyslexics or neurodivergence, people who have really struggled. If they want to tell their story, they can write in a book, whether it's something they just write themselves or self-publish, whether they go for a publisher. We can do it. Don't let people believe that you can't do it. It's just, as I said, finding the right tribal people, groups like this with intersectional individual, places where you can go and just be able to pause and then figure out what it is, how you're going to do it, and how you can be intentional about it. I am slowly having a little smile to say, I did it. I did what I said I wanted to do when I was 10. A lot of things happened at 10, because I wanted to write at 10 as well. To think it's taken me all this time, but I did it. It does warm my heart a little bit. And I want to make it warm my heart a lot more. But the traumas of feeling is still there. I keep it real, because I don't want anyone to be an illusion that it's still not a journey. I don't want to say struggle, but I'm leaning into my strengths more and more. That's what I love about my journey. I'm learning to know me.
Love it. I agree, Helen. It is so inspiring to just hear you speak. And oftentimes we don't really emphasize enough that journey. Actually, I know that many people that I've met across the years have talked about they're not even liking themselves. That journey is really an important piece, that whole acceptance of self and loving yourself as well. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I agree. So inspiring. What does intersectional strength sound like? Yeah, what does it smell like? What's all the sensory visions of it when you walk into a room? What does that strength feel like?
Ruth, that's a real big one there, because I have walked in rooms and I see no one like me. Or if I do see someone like me, they're serving the food. I don't want to feel there's a privilege to that. I just want to see more of me in those rooms. I just have to remember I said about this ancestral root, show up and believe that you're meant to be here. I think that's all of what I can think about it, that I have to remember I deserve to be here. Why shouldn't I be here? More of us should be in the same space and room. And yeah, I just have to remember that thing. I show up like I'm meant to be here and not play it small.
It sounds like, it feels like taking up the space. I'm meant to be here, not apologizing, be unapologetically advocating for yourself and all the things. Also remembering the joy of it all. Okay. So if you could tell any professional right now in their career that truth about building a career in their own terms, what would it be? What would be that message to them?
be as authentic as you can and be able to speak your truth as well as you can. Because as I said, this is where I struggle, and you can see I can struggle because I know everybody's situation. It's not always going to be easy. If you can be as authentic as you can and not apologize for who you are and lean into your strengths, it's a good start, depending on what part of your journey you're in. But just try to show up and be you as much as you can authentically. I say it because I can notice in organizations where it's really tough. And that's why I'm always like, I know that people are really finding it hard, but let's be on the positive. It's about being authentically you. It may be cliche, but trying your best to be curious in the organization. Ask, where do you find this? Where do you find that? And try to find that joy. It's like I need to have a day to think about it. Or I can only put it from my point of view, being able to be me in the workplace and is just led me to not apologize. I do, but I say it in a way like it's just that my brains can't say the word today. I make people aware this is some of the things that I am. So you're aware. I make it easy for people to ask me questions and be aware that it's okay. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well enough on it, but I'm just finding your voice, whatever that looks like, to be able to let people know if something they've said is uncomfortable or we need to have a different procedure or something that is more inclusive. It's just creating space to find your voice in that and being able to speak.
Helen's saying, showing up and taking that space has got me in trouble or focused on as a problem. But I keep going. So I keep educating others about inclusion and acceptance. We can relate to that as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're speaking up, it's not always the norm of what everyone else is thinking. That's the whole point. We do think differently. Let's speak to that a little bit when we do take up space and almost being forced to not take up space. What are some things that we could do around that?
Yeah, I relate. That's why I'm always holding back, because sometimes the places we're working in, because they haven't done the work to be comfortable, to ask the questions and make people feel that sense of belonging and understanding and empathy. Helen's right. That's why I'm always like, this is my experience of it, but I know it's not always the experience of others. To answer your question again, which you're saying, and I don't know why my brain's just gone in, but that's the work, isn't it? Some of us are having to be that radical or that advocate, because if no one does it, what happens? And it's a really tricky one, because you want to show up to work and be able to just do your work. I was isolated at work because I used to always ask questions. I had people who didn't like me at work and they would sit over there and think, oh gosh, Marcia's going to ask a question again, because I made people work. But I thought that's what work. I'm more aware about that, and I'm secure in myself. If someone doesn't want to talk to me because I'm asking questions, I don't know what to say. That's the only way I'm going to get my work done. I'm quite an enthusiastic person. So if there's something to do, I'll be asking the questions. I say, can we do this off? Do you see what I mean? I'm not answering your question, Ruth. I've totally forgotten. I've still got a hell on the visuals there about the space and about acceptance. Good on you that you're going to still show up, but it's a tricky one. Yeah, isolation is the words, a question, asks. For sure. And that's why I'm really struggling, not because I don't have thoughts on it, but I just always have this compassion or empathy. It's not always the same. But I think for me, I'm going to still show up, and I'm still going to speak up for those who don't feel they've got a voice. I'm just that person, and not all of us can do it. And it may take time as well if we do it. Does that make sense, Ruth?
Absolutely. I think because in an organisation, right, it's psychological safety. If there is psychological safety there, then you're able to just say what you need to say and know that it's not going to be taken offensively. It's just literally information for you to take, because offence is caused by somebody's interpretation, right? However, if you haven't got psychological safety, then I believe that, going back to your point around joy and self-expression, channel it somewhere else. Is there something you can do in your own writing? Is there something that you can do on your own platforms that still gives you the voice, still validates you and your experience without you having to fight? You want to be able to still articulate yourself, but perhaps not all spaces allow you for that. Having a channel gives you that, whether you're doing it through art or whatever else, to remove that isolation, right? Because we know that isolation isn't going to help support us moving forward. For sure, big empathy, want to speak up, but to create a level playing field for the future generations. Absolutely. There's different ways you can do that. Marcia, talk to us a little bit about the different things that you do, I guess the pockets that you do that helps you to have that self-expression.
Yes, I'm on social media quite a lot. As I said, I did an information science degree, so it's very fitting being an informationist. I do like social media, and it's not for everybody. It can be exhausting. I do say if you do go on it and you have to pause. It's understandable. But for me, social media is about having a platform where I can share things that is on my mind. For example, Instagram is just a brain dump of things that I think about, things that are worrying for me about children in terms of neurodiversity, funding cuts and stuff like that. I use that as a channel. And through that, I've got work. Through that, I've been able to speak more about things that are passionate for me. You heard that word about being passionate and purposeful. There I am finding that platform, which I would never have done at the very beginning because I was scared of making mistakes, putting something in writing because I was going to make a spelling mistake. Once I overcome that, that's been a channel for me. Obviously, I've mentioned about the book, writing down my thoughts and put it into writing that it goes into print. I've developed something or created something through not feeling that I had that safety somewhere else. We all can create things to make us feel more safe or be happy in the things that we're doing. Those are just some of the things that I've done. I find myself in lots of things because I used to also just enjoy saying, yeah, I'll do this. I'll try this. It's given me opportunity to do things that I would never have done because I'm willing to give it a try. As I said, it's something about being curious that we get lost as children. I keep going back to school because it's the experience that I have that I feel like sometimes you're just told to sit in rows and that's it, nothing else. What happened to the nurturing? I think I'm learning to do a lot more of that in my adulthood because I feel it was missing. The questions of compassion, self-discovery, self-love, it's almost talked out of us. I feel like I use some of those platforms and the things I do to do the things that I love or the child in me wants to do, if that makes sense. I always say if that makes sense because it still stems from the younger self feeling, do you understand? Or maybe you're going to misunderstand. I know the language that I do sometimes because I'm recognizing that maybe no one understands what I'm saying. It's all in the head. I can have those conversations with myself while I'm still talking as well. You're seeing it live, the neurodiversity brain having a conversation with itself. I'm trying to find all avenues to do the things that I love and to create a space of just being happy. I think there's a whole conversation about being happy and what that looks like.
April, just going back to your social media piece around having that break and mental wellness on social media is an important piece. So thank you for sharing that, April. Another form of self-expression, what helps you to feel safe in these spaces too? I just want to give you the opportunity, Marcia, to let people know how they can get in contact with you as well and follow your work.
Yeah, so thank you for listening to me. I am on LinkedIn, which is my name, Marcia Brissett-Bailey. I am on the Instagram, which is my favorite place to be, the Black Dyslexic. Those are the main places you will find me if you want to contact me or reach out to me. But just thank you so much for the questions and your sharing. I think people take it for granted or don't realize sometimes what it means to just share and be in that space. It made it really interactive because everybody had a point, especially when I was talking about reasonable adjustments. And I know about all the things that was brought up, but just in that moment, I just couldn't think about those kinds of adjustments that we need, which will help us to show up and be ourselves. Thank you so much for having me, Ruth, and Intersectional Individuals. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Can I just say thank you, Marcia, so much. Helen and Molly are saying thank you so much, Marcia. We appreciate you all.
Bye.